welcome back to another Monday. And today we are going to get kind of serious about the Ascension and really the effects that the Ascension has on who we are, on our own mental health. So, if you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, then this video is for you. And maybe you're not struggling right now. Maybe you're in a really good place, which is awesome. But you have struggled in the past with anxiety or intrusive thoughts or depression, then once again, this video is for you. And I do talk about mental health quite frequently. I mean, not super often, but often enough because it is something that comes up over and over again as we awaken and as we move into these higher energies, higher frequencies. So that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover kind of a little bit of everything mental health wise: depression, anxiety, intrusive thoughts. And I'm going to go over why exactly we experience these things within our awakening, and then also how we can remedy them. Tools, tips, and tricks that I recommend to really help you along during this time. Now, the reason why I am talking about this today is because a lot of people have been reaching out and saying that they've been struggling recently. I think that, just at this time, 2023 is a huge year of really purging out what no longer serves us. And then also we have a huge uptick in electromagnetic frequency and solar flares, which is also going to really affect and impact our mental health. Not to mention, a lot of people around us are also awakening and ascending, and that creates a lot of turmoil and upheaval and ego deaths and a lot of projection. So you might be feeling that from friends and family members and coworkers as well, which can be really difficult to navigate. So, before we get started, I have a couple of announcements. Of course, if you are watching this and you haven't subscribed, definitely hit that subscribe button. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you actually enjoyed the video, and share this video, whether it be on Reddit or TikTok or YouTube or Instagram, or just to your friends. Be sure to share this video out because it is really, really important for those who are struggling to feel seen and heard, and honestly to feel like they're not alone. I think that's the biggest thing when we are struggling with mental health. I do want to mention as well, if you are really struggling, and what I mean by that is if you're really on the edge at this time, then we are going to include a crisis line, and that is going to lead you to an international page of crisis lines. So there is help, there is support out there. I'm definitely not a licensed psychologist or even therapist, and if it is to that point, then there are resources, and we're going to provide some of those in the description. Also, we had an absolutely incredible Galactic Federation event just yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. Like, what day is it? I don't know. And it was amazing. We hit so many heavy topics with the Galactic Federation. We covered solar flares, and we're talking about the big one. We covered the World Health Organization, the WHO, and the Mark of the Beast. We talked about cryptids, and then we also talked about AI in the universe, and really what is the future of AI? Like, what does the Galactic Federation envision as the future of AI for humanity here? And then also the shadow government updates. Where are we at with the whole light and dark battle, and the agendas and the timelines? I don't know about you guys, but timelines have been really weird recently. Like, dreams have been really weird, a lot of flashbacks, flash forwards, a lot of seemingly parallel timelines coming up that seemingly are impossible, but they are coming up, and I'm definitely not the only one there. So if you're interested in any of those topics, and we covered quite a few other questions as well, definitely check out the Galactic Federation recording, and that would be episode 6, 2023, season 2023, for those of you who are watching this like years in the future. And then on the membership site, so on the Cosmic Society membership, this month, June, is all about mental health. So I actually deep dive into other mental health problems such as schizophrenia and psychosis, and why one might experience these type of things during the Ascension awakening, or just in general being a starseed. So if you want to go the other way with mental health, and you want to deepen mental health and your exploration, then definitely check out all of June's content for this month. It's all centered around mental health. And then I also just released a mental health meditation yesterday on the Cosmic Society that's going to really help you deepen that practice and navigate through using breath work and intention setting and your focus. So let's get started with depression. Depression and awakening. Why is it that during our awakening process, we tend to have bouts of depression? And I would kind of characterize depression, and I'm not necessarily talking about chronic depression, and there's so many different layers of depression, but having bouts of depression, I kind of define as really feeling like apathetic, feeling lack of motivation, really just not feeling motivated to do anything in life, and feeling sad or down, lacking energy, really wanting to sleep often, having like emotional outbursts, but not really knowing where they're coming from. And this is probably the biggest kicker to experiencing depression, whether it's for a day or an hour or a week or many, many years. It's that it's really hard to pinpoint where it's coming from. And what I find is within the cycle of depression, when you begin the feeling of depression or the experience of depression, you look around your life and you say, there's nothing in my life that could make me feel this way, that could make me feel depressed. As depression really permeates into your life and it goes on for quite some time, friendships start falling through, job opportunities start falling through, your physical health, your obviously other aspects of your mental, emotional health start falling through. And then all of a sudden, the depression spirals into, now I have a lot to be depressed about because your vibrational state has created that, and then it spirals, and then all of a sudden you're stuck in this hole and you feel like you can't get out. And it's a very kind of suffocating type of feeling, especially when you're at that point. So I believe that the reason why depression arises during our awakening, or just in star seeds in general, galactic volunteers, is that we have more of an awareness of our life than we either did before or than the rest of the world has for their life. So that extra layer or level of awareness can make you feel really, really alone. Like, who here went through your awakening and felt absolutely alone and isolated and a little bit crazy and like no one understood you? Who here still looks around feeling like you're alone and no one understands you? Right? If I were to have a general conversation with a person in a grocery store, and I were to be like, I believe in aliens, and like, I actually channel them, and like, did you know we're in a different dimension? And, I would feel alone and crazy, and yeah. And that could be very depressing to feel that way. Especially at the beginning when you're not really confident in your differences. So that extra level of awareness is going to make you feel alone, because a lot of other people at this time just don't have that extra level of awareness. Also, when you're going from a life where you feel like everything's good. You've got a decent job, you've got decent friends, you've got a decent handle on things in life, and it's relatively easy and maybe sometimes boring. And then all of a sudden you have a spiritual awakening, and you're like, there's conspiracies and agendas and aliens and other dimensions and consciousness and energy and chakras and crystals and all of that. It's going to feel very overwhelming. And there's going to be a sense of loss in your old self. And once again, it's going to feel quite isolating because your new perspectives do not match your old life. And it takes sometimes years for your physical reality to align to your new awakened energy and perspectives. Once again, it's going to feel isolating and lonely. Also, the other thing that can be very difficult about experiencing the awakening and then also experiencing depression, along with the ego death, along with the feeling of alone, is that there's a lot of emotions that are buried within our soul that actually come up from past lifetimes. And this is extremely difficult to deal with. Once again, it's like waking up one day and thinking to yourself, everything in my life is fine, and yet I feel really freaking depressed, and I have no reason to feel this way. I feel really sad, or I feel really anxious, or I feel really overwhelmed, or I feel really emotional, or I feel like this sense of loss. And sometimes those emotions are actually getting unburied from past lifetimes. And for us as linear, logical human beings who have been programmed to think a certain way, if we can't pinpoint where that emotion is coming from, then we feel like simply we cannot solve the problem of being emotional. And of course, it's not about solving being emotional, because being emotional is not a problem, and yet especially in Western society, it's really looked at as an issue, right? You're being hysterical, calm down. And we see this a lot in parenting as well, especially parenting toddlers, which I'm sure I'm going to be looking forward to, is that self-regulation, right? It's like, well, just calm down, just chill out, just figure it out, and it's not about that. So how do we navigate the state of depression during our awakening, or really just during any phase of our lives? So I've got a couple of pointers here. The first one, and probably the most important one, is to be okay with not being okay. Now, there was a study, and I've mentioned this before, and I actually have no idea what the study, like what it's called, but I'm sure you can Google it. There was a study that I read about where they observed Americans versus Russians in the state of depression. So they were, I guess, like, I'm losing a word here. Like observing, quizzing. They were like taking statistics, I guess, from people who were experiencing depression in Russia versus people who were experiencing depression in America. And essentially what they found was that Russians had a much shorter experience of depression. Same amount of people got depressed, and Americans had a much longer experience of depression. And when they took a look at the variables as to why that was, it was because in Russia, it's okay. It's totally normalized to feel not okay, to feel depressed. And in America, in the Western world, it's like, nope, you're happy. There's nothing in your life that you should be unhappy about. So keep smiling, keep that smile on your face because you're good. And there's this expectation in America or in the Western world that that you should be happy, that is the normal state of being. And so what they essentially found is that because Russians just accepted the fact that they were unhappy and depressed in that moment, they overcame depression much faster than Americans. And I think some of it is societal pressures. Because in Russia, there's not a societal pressure to always be happy, they were able to be in that state. And in America, there's a pressure of, well, if you're depressed, then you need medication and you need, medical help, which doesn't mean that you don't need that, but there are other things, other ways to go about it as well. So first thing is, be okay with not being okay. And you will pass through it, instead of going around it or distracting yourself, really be with it. Be with the feeling of sadness. Okay, so second thing I recommend for those experiencing or ever have experienced depression is really seek help and support from others, because awakening is a very lonely process, and you don't necessarily need to find a group of people who are also awakening, which would be helpful. But just in general, like seek others who are going through and experiencing depression and loneliness and sadness, and it really does take a lot of support and a lot of people in our lives to help us get out of a state. And I think when we're feeling lonely and sad and depressed, the only thing that we want to do is curl up in a ball and binge watch Netflix and feel sad, and be alone. But I really recommend reach out to people that really do care about you, because there's probably more people than you realize that really do care. Even if they don't understand the whole alien thing, they do care and they want to support you. And I'm sure that by you sharing your experiences, you're going to help someone unknowingly around you as well. And then my third point here is raise your vibration by holding gratitude. So one of the easiest ways to not necessarily like get yourself out of depression, because once again, it's important to be in it and feel it. But one way that you can help to navigate it is holding space for gratitude. And if you're looking at your life and you're saying, I have a shit job and I have shitty friends and I have terrible relations and I have no money in the bank account and my socks have holes in them, think about the rest of the world. My wife and I are actually watching 90 Day Fiancé right now. And it's really interesting to see, actually, we're watching 90 Day Fiancé the other way, which means that they go to other countries and you see how other people in other countries live. And to get that amount of perspective that most of these other countries don't even have running hot water is it's quite an eye-opener. And it's really important to say, hey, not only do I have running hot water, if you do, you might not, but I can, drink out of my tap water. I don't know if you would want to, but you can drink clean water out of your tap. And there are millions of people around the world who have to, trek many miles to get water, and then they have to boil it because it's not clean, and so on and so forth. So there are so many things that we do, we can find gratitude for. Just the fact that you're watching this and you have access to internet is something that you can be grateful for. So so raise your vibration by finding gratitude in your life for anything. Pass by a plant, a tree, even a dying tree, and appreciate its existence in your life down your path. And then I would also recommend, too, if you're open to it, past life regressions do tend to help, especially for those buried past life emotions. So once again, a lot of the time we don't know why we feel a certain way, and by going through your past lifetimes, you can close a lot of energies that have been affecting you that you may not realize are affecting you, or help you see patterns in your life that you can then close because you see the pattern. Okay, so hopefully that helps you through depression. Let's talk about anxiety. I would say out of everything that I talk about today, anxiety is the number one symptom of awakening, without a doubt. Maybe you've never experienced anxiety in your whole life. Maybe you've suffered chronically from anxiety your whole life. Anxiety is really prominent right now. And sadly enough, anxiety is really prominent in the younger generations as well for so many reasons, which we're not going to get into in today's video. But why is anxiety so prominent in starseeds, old souls, and also throughout your awakening journey? Essentially what happens is we become more sensitive to energies. So the physical material world becomes less prominent in a sense, and the energy that runs through the material world becomes much more prominent. Which also means that you start to begin having sensitivities with other people in your life as well. It's really fascinating how when you're just stuck in a sense or blissfully ignorant of the other dimensions and realms and worlds and possibilities, and you're just really rooted in the third dimension or the physical reality, you don't really feel anyone else's energy. You're like, oh, it sucks that you're going through something right now, That's about it. But when you actually become more sensitive and more awakened and more aware, you become more empathic and you feel what everyone else is going through. And that really sucks sometimes. It really does, because all of a sudden, you're not just dealing with your own emotions, with your own navigations, with your own experiences. You now have to feel the experiences of everyone around you, and possibly even the people on TV. If you're watching the news or something, that can be very anxiety inducing. So it's so natural that we become way overstimulated as we awaken, as we ascend to higher vibrations. We become more and more anxious simply because we are more connected and we feel more of the energies that are going on around us. Those energies are not changing. They've always been there our whole lives. We're just tapping into them more frequently. So, how do we help anxiety during an awakening? The number one tool, and I have a whole video on this. I think it's about an hour long if you really want to check it out. And I think it's called The Biggest Tool for 2022 or The Biggest Tool for 2021. It's one of those years. And it's vibrational navigation. And so essentially, this is a concept that I channeled and downloaded, and I want to say it was 2021. That was a huge tool that we all needed to understand, okay? And so vibrational navigation is essentially the ability to connect and disconnect with the world around you. So if you have a neighbor who is always complaining about your garbage cans or your dog or your landscaping or whatever a neighbor would complain about, and it really bothers you, then it means that you are too entangled with that person. Likewise, it could be a coworker that bothers you, or an in-law that bothers you, or whoever, right, that bothers you. And once again, it means that you are too energetically connected with that person. And so vibrational navigation is simply the process of disconnecting from the energies, the people, the situations, and even the material objects around you that no longer serve you, and connecting with other energies in a very conscious way. We're utilizing our free will to connect and subsequently disconnect. So once again, going back to holding the space of gratitude. I could walk down the street and say, oh my God, it's so freaking hot in the desert, which it is. It's so hot here. Or I could walk down the street and say, wow, I love that breeze, and hear the birds chirping in the trees, and look at the wind blowing through the palm trees. Like, isn't that beautiful? It's the same experience, but it's the choice that you make to bring in that experience in one way or another. Vibrational navigation. What are you going to choose to connect with? How are you going to utilize your free will, your consciousness? And so vibrational navigation is going to help anxiety because you are choosing to disconnect from all of the energies that are making you anxious. Especially when you talk to another person who's anxious, you start to feel anxious. And it's just because you are too connected to that person. Which leads me to my next point, which is cutting cords. Cutting cords energetically has saved me in so many situations where I felt really, really overwhelmed. So a really good example for me in my own life is when I do public speaking. If I were to think about all of the people who drove in and flew in and who, showed up just to see me on stage, and they're so excited to hear what I have to say. If I were to think about all of those people and their energy and their excitement and their even connection or attachment, I would get really overwhelmed, really anxious, really stressed out. So what I have to do is I have to completely disconnect from those people. As much as I love all of you people, I have to disconnect because it allows me to show up and say, even if I had a hater in the crowd, I'm not going to be affected by it because I'm just going to show up and really own what my truth is. And by cutting cords, you actually live a much more authentic and aligned life by doing that. So cutting cords doesn't have to be cut cords with your enemies. Cutting cords means clearing the energetic space between you and everyone in your life. And I just recently mentioned, I think in my last Q&A with my membership, that I actually cut cords with my wife and even my son, which was a really tough thing to do. But it had to be done because we were feeding off of each other's energy, and I wasn't able to show up and help him as a mother because he was making me anxious, and I was anxious, and he was anxious, and it was like this whole spiral. So after I cut cords with him, I was like, oh my God, okay, I'm nice and calm, and let me give you some love, objectively, right? So also realize that the second that you cut cords with someone and you interact with them, whether you think about them or talk to them, you're immediately creating another cord with them, which is totally fine. But anytime you feel like that cord is impeding your ability to stay present or be authentic or just be your own separate, objective, individual person, then it's a good time to cut cords. And like I said, they will get reestablished immediately, but at least you're releasing the old energy between the two people, if that makes sense. And then you can start a new relationship and a new dynamic in that moment. And sometimes I have to cut cords with people 5 times a day if I'm trying to overcome something, like maybe it's a breakup or a friendship that is making me feel a certain way, cutting those cords often. The other thing that's going to really help with anxiety is downtime. And I'm sure, 2020 taught us all how to be alone and hopefully love being alone. Personally, I love my alone time. I love my downtime. I am such a Cancer in the way that I love being at home. We call it caving, which is like close all of the windows and like stay in one room and enjoy it quite a bit. So downtime and separation from the chaos of the world, from the chaos of friends and family and coworkers and all of that BS can be really, really amazing. Actually, someone I know said I'm taking off a week of work, and I'm like, wait, yeah, way to go, congratulations, I'm glad. What are you gonna do with your week off of work? And she's like, staycation. Me and the husband are gonna stay home, maybe we'll order food in and do nothing. And I'm like, yes, own it, absolutely, I love it. We don't always have to be doing something to feel productive. Remember that during our awakening, during our ascension, we start to realize that you're working, you're eating, you're sleeping, you're socializing, you're working, you're eating, you're sleeping, you're socializing. You're doing the things that you need to do in the physical world, but you're also existing in many, many, many other realms and spaces and dimensions and levels and layers in the universe, which is exhausting. We're doing the work. We're really putting in that double shift. So the downtime is so, so important for all of us, and I'm sure you guys love that too. And then the last thing that I would recommend that's going to really help with anxiety is self-care, right? That could be writing in a journal or going to see a therapist or just talking to your best friend. It could be exercising, doing yoga, stretching, taking a bath. It could be making a really healthy meal for yourself. Okay, self-care is so, so important. Now, one of the best self-care mechanisms that I utilize for myself, which really helps with anxiety, is check-ins. That's what I call them. So anytime I feel like I'm spiraling a little bit, and what I mean by that is maybe I do have a conference coming up. Maybe I do have, what else do I feel anxious about? Like a big trip coming up. And I'm thinking about all the things that I need to pack and all the things that I need to do and all the paperwork and all the people I need to email and all the things. When I start to spiral, I will take a bath, put on some nice music, and I'll check in with myself. And in that moment, I'll be like, hey, Elizabeth, what's going on? Like, you seem a little worked up today. You seem a little overwhelmed. Like, what do you need? How can I help you? I check in with my human. And I've been doing this for probably since the beginning of my awakening, probably 12 plus years now of really checking in with myself. And I actually started that practice when I started to tune into my inner child and say, hey, little Liz, how are you doing? What do you need? Creativity, expression, maybe building a Lego set or something like that. And now I check in with my adult self just as often, if not more often, especially when I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. So I really highly recommend check in with yourself, check in with your human, see what you need, and talk to yourself as if you were a therapist. And that's going to really help you tune out of everything else and tune in with yourself. Okay. And then the last mental health thing that we're going to talk about here is intrusive thoughts and awakening. Now, the thing that goes hand in hand with intrusive thoughts is psychic attacks. So, a part of getting psychically attacked is intrusive thoughts. Now, for those of you who don't know, a psychic attack, how do I describe this? Essentially, a psychic attack is an entity, an energy, a restless spirit who decides to target you and attack you. I mean, it sounds really awful. I guess some symptoms that I would mention of psychic attacks are intrusive thoughts, really vivid, fucked up dreams. There's no other way to say it. Like, you wake up from a dream and you're like, that was messed up. Like, I would never come up with that on my own. Also, like, having random people, like, I don't want to say like abuse you, but like come after you. Like, I've had like random strangers just like yell at me at the top of their lungs, and it's actually because there's something that was able to get into their body and verbally attack me in that way. What are some other psychic attacks? A lot of anxiety, depression can be signs of psychic attacks. Sometimes physical ailments can be signs of psychic attacks, but they're not always. If you have a physical ailment, it doesn't mean that it's always just a psychic attack, if that makes sense. Is there anything else that yeah, and then I want to talk specifically about intrusive thoughts, which is probably the number one symptom, other than the really messed up dreams, of a psychic attack. So intrusive thoughts are essentially, and I'm sure we've all experienced them, where out of the blue, out of nowhere, you get a really messed up thought. Like, maybe you're out to dinner with some friends, and in the middle of dinner, in the middle of like a fun, lighthearted conversation, there's this thought in your mind to pick up that knife, I know it sounds messed up, and like stab your friend beside you. Other intrusive thoughts are maybe you're driving down a freeway or a highway, and you have this thought of, I'm just going to drive off the road. I'm just going to see what happens. Or what if I just hit that person? Like, usually they're like really messed up. Now, if you don't have your like wits about you, or you're in a once again, you're in a sad, depressed, or just like lack of self-confidence state of being, then you're going to think that those thoughts are coming from you, and you're going to think that you're fucked up. Like, you're going to think that you want to murder your friend that's sitting beside you. And if you go home and you take in that thought as your own, it can really devastate and affect you in a very deeply negative way. I remember even being a kid and driving in my parents' car, like in the front seat, and I was like obsessed with Beanie Babies as a kid. And the window was down, and I had such an anxiety that I was going to throw my favorite Beanie Baby out the window that I had to roll up the window. I know I'm aging myself with that statement. Roll up the window to prevent me from throwing the Beanie Baby out. And then, I've talked a lot about intrusive thoughts and OCD behaviors as well, and I have those on my website if you guys want to check out OCD. You just want to type it in, because I've linked those quite a few times as well. So, intrusive thoughts. Essentially, what I believe about intrusive thoughts is that these are thoughts coming from an outside being, an outside entity, kind of like a poltergeist type of, energy, or even like I call them energetic parasites. And they will come in and try and lower our vibrational frequency. If we are at an extremely high vibrational frequency, we cannot be affected by those lower energies. So it's almost like what happens is when we have a really shitty day or a really shitty week or really shitty lots of weeks and lots of months, our vibration starts to really wear down. And then, unfortunately, right, we get these attachments, and those attachments bring us down even further. And then we start to really spiral, and that's what leads to prolonged states of depression. And like I mentioned with the depression, one thing that can really help is a state of gratitude or appreciation, because what that momentary gratitude does is it raises our frequency enough to get rid of these parasites and entity attachments. And I also want to let you know, like super, super, super important, it is so beyond common to have an attachment, a parasite, an energy attack you. Like, you would not be here in an awakened state being able to even experience this content if you have not had a psychic attack. Okay, we have to experience the dark side in order to really understand what the light is. It's very common. So without a doubt, I know for a fact you would not be here if you have not experienced a psychic attack, and they continue to happen. They shouldn't perpetually happen, but they will continue to happen to help it teach us. So don't feel like you're an awful person for attracting that. Personally, I cut cords and clear my energy, and especially get Sharma to clear my energy all the time because of the nature of the work that I do. But also, if I'm in the middle of an ego death, I'm in the susceptible place to allow those attachments to take place. And I can feel them, so I can do something about them. And a lot of people aren't as sensitive with feeling them. So why do intrusive thoughts or psychic attacks happen during an awakening? Essentially, they happen because we start to open up our energies, and we don't necessarily know how to protect ourselves when we open up our energies. A lot of the time, our spiritual curiosity will lead us to just being really, really open and floating around in higher states. And in those higher states, we attract lower vibrations. Oh yeah, there's a saying, the brighter a light you shine, the darker a shadow you cast. So once again, it's just duality. Okay. So how do we help intrusive thoughts? What can we do to help navigate psychic attacks and intrusive thoughts? The number one thing is protect yourself. So if you want to, say, for example, channel energy, and I believe that we are all psychic and we are all mediums and we all have the ability to tap into other realms. Without a doubt, I know that for a fact. So if you want to tune in, great. If you want to be spiritually curious, awesome. But find the appropriate time and place to do so. What I recommend is when you're first starting out, you need to open yourself up in a safe space, which means probably don't be out in public, be at home somewhere, burn some sage, set some intentions of safety, be very clear about where you want to go. And then what's really important after you, say, meditate and you open yourself and you want to obtain something, even if you don't see it or feel it or bring something in that moment, that's fine. But make sure that you close off your third eye and you close off your energy after you've opened yourself. The number one problem that I always see that I experienced and that my wife experienced, that everyone I know who has ever awakened does and experiences, the number one issue is that you'll go to bed and you'll be like, quantum physics, yeah, like what's that all about? Ooh, my alien spirit guides, oh yeah, is there anyone around? And then in the process of being spiritually curious, what happens is you leave yourself open, you fall asleep, and you have really messed up dreams that night. And then you start getting really intense anxiety attacks. And then you start having really bizarre, intrusive thoughts. And it spirals and spirals and spirals. Why? Because you left yourself open and you didn't actually close yourself down after being spiritually curious at night. So I would only recommend night meditations and night curiosity if you are really aware of closing yourself off before you fall asleep, or if you're just a little bit more practiced, if that makes sense. So protection is key. The right time and place to open yourself is key. Closing yourself off is key. And a lot of you are like, well, how do I do that? How do I open and how do I close myself? It is as simple and easy as saying, I open myself to experience the information that I need to receive for the highest good of all involved. It's a lot of words, but literally, all you need to do is just set an intention to be open, and all you need to do is set an intention to be closed. And that is it. And that's it. There's no special like wizardry that needs to go into it. It's just an intention. Everything in the quantum realm is navigated through by intention. That's it. Okay. And then what I also recommend that's going to help with psychic attacks and intrusive thoughts is constantly connecting yourself to source frequency, to white light, and then also connecting yourself to inner earth. So what I like to do, sometimes I do this multiple times a day, sometimes I do it once a week, sometimes I don't do it for a couple of months, but I usually don't let it go too long. And thank you so much, Jeff, for that super chat. So what I like to do, I'm a visual person, but you can just say words because the intention will do just the same. I will sit down, I'll close my eyes, I'll focus on my breath, I'll quiet my mind, and then I'll visualize almost like a beam of white light energy going from the crown of my head all the way up into the center of the universe, connecting with pure source energy, coming all the way down, coming through my body, filling my entire body up with this beautiful white light and sometimes a golden energy. And then likewise, I will imagine my grounding cord that goes right from the base of my spine all the way down into earth, and I connect my grounding cord into the center of earth, like inner earth. So I see my grounding cord. Sometimes I see it as like a transparent white light. Sometimes I see it as a red rod going down, and then I see the energy of planet Earth, which is like a beautiful, almost like metallic green energy coming up. So I'll have like green energy coming up, golden white light coming down, and it'll be mixing in my body. And it's just like such a good feeling. So I do that often, and that allows me to stay grounded while I'm connected without necessarily like needing to channel. It's just like an energetic upkeep, if that makes sense. And thank you again for that other super chat. So I do that, and then also on top of that, things like crystals, essential oils, and sage will all help you clear energy and really energetically maintain things like your household and maintain your own frequency. So we have to think about our energy body as as something that we need to maintain, right? It's kind of like you're eating right and you're exercising, and that's all great, but if you're not necessarily maintaining a high vibrational state, or you're not maintaining or even thinking about maintaining your auric body, then you're only really focusing on 50% of your existence as far as maintenance is concerned. So the mental health maintenance is in correlation to the energetic and spiritual maintenance of who you are as a soul. So hopefully this really helped you. These were a lot of really great tips. I know there's so many people in the world right now who are suffering, who don't really realize or understand where this is coming from, and they feel really freaking alone. So once again, please be sure to share this video. You never know who you're gonna help. And in this video, I'm not the crazy alien chick, so share it to people who maybe aren't spiritually awakened and who really just need the support at a mental health level at this time. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Check out the Cosmic Society membership. It is where I can release so many videos and content totally censorship free. That's the most important part, is we're getting way too censored these days on all of the platforms. So we decided to create my own platform. It's kind of like the Netflix of EA, and we're about a month away from launching our own app as well. So I'm really, really excited about that. And it's going to make it very user-friendly and easy to navigate. And of course, check out the Galactic Federation Summit that happened just yesterday. It went like an hour and a half. It was absolutely incredible. I felt so activated after. I felt so activated after that before I began, I was starving. I was so hungry. And then after I finished, I was so full. Like, it was just such a weird feeling of like I could not bring myself to eat because it was just such an intense experience. So, yeah, hopefully you all felt activated from it as well, and you can check that out on the website. And that would be June, so episode 6, 2023, Galactic Federation, talking about solar flares and the World Health Organization and so many other really great things. So other than that, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your super chats. I really, really am grateful for all of you just for showing up, and I'm grateful that I can help you along in your journey. And I just want to remind you that you're exactly where you need to be. Okay, don't try and distract yourself from this moment. Really be here, really be present, and check in with yourself. How are you doing? And what do you need? How can you best support yourself at this time? And once again, you're doing enough. You're exactly where you need to be. And other than that, I will see all of you in the new Earth frequency. Bye for now.